Welcome to the Beau Show. As always, I appreciate your viewership. I think I caused a bit of a stir with one of my last shows about Bill Gates, as more and more people are waking up to some of our most powerful yet corrupt elites. And for that reason, I want to focus today's show on two more of those elites, one of whom has been in government a long time, Anthony Fauci, and also a cabinet appointment by Joe Biden, Attorney General Merrick Garland. Both of these men are in very high positions, but they've had a string of controversies that make them seem incompetent in their respective roles, and thus endangering the American public. Biden has consistently put people in high positions that are either not competent people or at the very least partisan hacks. So let's take the first culprit, Dr. Anthony Fauci. The National Institutes of Health has admitted that they were funding gain-of-function research, which was categorically denied by Fauci in his testimony under oath in hearings on Capitol Hill. One of the few congressmen who pressed him about this was Senator Rand Paul. He has referred Fauci for criminal prosecution for lying under oath. I interviewed the senator about that very thing, and here's what he said. Well, you have been on Dr. Fauci's case like white on rice, and I'm curious that, since your accusation that the NIH funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan seems to be accurate, what is the status of your referral of him to the DOJ for lying under oath?
This is the same DOJ that's now wanting to prosecute mothers for being outspoken at school board meetings. So I don't think they're going to do anything. I do think, though, that we've been successful in bringing him down a notch or two. There was a time when he was unquestioned, and no matter what he said about dating on Tinder or baseball in October or hockey, no matter what he was saying, it was taken as the gospel. Now people are starting to say, you know what? He's been inconsistent in the things he said. The other day he was asked on CNN, what about natural immunity? And he acted as if, oh my goodness, well, yeah, that might be something good to think about. We should look into that.
So even though Senator Paul was right about Fauci, his referral of Fauci to the DOJ is almost in vain because Merrick Garland, another one of Biden's bad boys that I'll get to in a bit, is the Attorney General. The NIH has admitted that it funded gain-of-function research, which is the type of research that makes a virus more transmissible and, of course, highly dangerous. And then there are newer reports that the NIH has also been funding a number of horrible experiments on dogs. A conservative watchdog group called White Coat Waste Project reported that the NIAID, under Fauci, funded an experiment done on beagles in which sandflies would eat the dogs' faces. According to PolitiFact, that claim was false. It was not funded by the NIAID. However, they did give $424,000 to the University of Georgia to test a potential vaccine for lymphatic filariasis, a parasite. This vaccine was given to beagles, many of which vocalized in pain, according to the study, and were euthanized in the end. Researchers say that beagles are the best test subjects and that it's standard to euthanize them. And they tout how these types of studies lead to vaccines and cures. Well, I suppose the COVID vaccines were just used on us rather than beagles as the test subject. In another study, the NIAID worked with SRI International, in which beagles were given experimental therapeutic drugs for HIV/AIDS and had their vocal cords cut, called a cordectomy. And then they were all euthanized. Once again, the researchers claim that a cordectomy is necessary when multiple dogs are present so that it reduces the noise. But even the American Veterinary Association said that devocalization of these dogs is not an alternative to humane treatment of animals in a lab setting. Now, I got all of this unpacked information from PolitiFact, which has a leftist bias to it. What I noticed is that PolitiFact wanted to make sure right at the outset that the story about the flies eating the dogs' heads was not funded by the NIAID, but it could not cover up for the other two studies, which have proved to be accurate. And they make a point to say that such studies are compliant with lab policies. And it begs the question, why does PolitiFact want to minimize what Fauci and the NIH did? I understand that some studies require, some rather unsavory things, but people get really off-put when you're talking about the treatment of animals, especially dogs. PolitiFact is run by the Poynter Institute, which is very left-wing. So again, when you do the digging, it's amazing how this fact-checking group wants to do the bidding of Anthony Fauci. Now that we know that gain of function was indeed conducted in Wuhan, what does PolitiFact have to say about that? And all of this has led to many concerned groups and lawmakers' justifiable outrage and the trending hashtag #ArrestFauci. So even though one of the studies in question may not have been totally accurate, was misreported, the other two were. And they just sweep it under the rug. And where's Joe Biden on this? How is it that Tony Fauci still has a job, especially after he has lied under oath? I think about how many lives were unnecessarily lost in this pandemic. If our government was funding research that makes bat coronaviruses more transmissible and deadly, particularly coming from a lab in China, which we have no business dealing with. That's straight up CCP stuff right there. They control it. They lie, and they lie some more. All of these documents that White Coat Waste was able to obtain came from a Freedom of Information Act request. They claim that they were the first to reveal Fauci's connection and the taxpayer funding for the Wuhan lab. And there seems to be some bipartisan support to request more info on the inhumane treatment of animals, as indicated by a letter to Fauci from dozens of House members. And a new poll from The Hill shows that a majority of Americans, 52%, believe that Fauci should resign. That's quite a shift from just last year when everyone trusted him and all the people on the left were so upset that Trump might disagree with him or fire him. I think the wool is finally being removed from Americans' eyes. This guy has served, I'm going to use that word lightly because he is the highest paid person in the federal government. He served about 5 administrations since 1984. And I think we can all agree that he served his time. But maybe there's some more time to be served somewhere else for possibly lying under oath. Now I want to turn attention to another one of Biden's bad boys, Attorney General Merrick Garland. Now Garland attended Harvard and clerked under Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. And the reason I want to mention that is because you would think this man is a seasoned attorney, a veteran. But when I show you some clips in a moment, you will rethink how sharp this guy is. Barack Obama tried to nominate Garland to the Supreme Court when Antonin Scalia passed away. But when the GOP had control of the Senate, Mitch McConnell refused to hold a vote because he was hoping for a Republican president, which eventually did happen when Donald Trump was elected. And he then filled that vacancy with current Justice Neil Gorsuch. Once Joe Biden became president, I guess he felt like he was obligated or owed Garland something, so he made him his attorney general. And that's a powerful position because, as you may recall, under Donald Trump, Attorney General Bill Barr used that position to crack down on a lot of things, including interpreting the proper laws to be enforced at the border, laws which were not heeded, by the way, by Barack Obama when it came to the no tolerance and catch and release. I think we saw a rather enhanced role when it came to Attorney General. And here we are, not even a year into Biden's disastrous presidency, and Merrick Garland is already making some very poor decisions. Now, remember earlier from my interview with Rand Paul that he referred Fauci to Garland and the DOJ for lying under oath. And as far as we know, as of this time, Garland has done nothing about that, which, although not surprising, shows us that he is not doing his job properly. But I will tell you where he is devoting his time, at the direction of his boss, Joe Biden. I'm sure you're aware by now of many of the parents across this country who are justifiably angry at school boards for silencing parents, preventing them from having a say in how their child is educated, whether their kid has to wear a mask, and even the type of curricula being taught, from critical race theory to diversity to gender to sex ed to sexual orientation. Parents have had to take their umbrage to school boards, where an unelected oligarchy sits there with draconian measures, shutting parents down and not listening to their concerns. And in one recent case in Loudoun County, Virginia, a young girl was assaulted by a transgender student. Loudoun County has been ground zero of quite a bit of controversy and outrage. Because of the level of anger in many parents, the National School Boards Association wrote Biden a letter asking him to address the protests and the violence that they claim that they have been witnessing. In other words, they were requesting federal response, not local, not state, federal. And they wanted to know if parents were even violating the Patriot Act and should be considered domestic terrorists. However, here's the kicker. The NSBA was consulting with White House officials in the drafting of this letter. So it's like a letter to me, from me, but I'm putting someone else's signature on it. And due to this letter, which outlined a number of incidents, most of which were nonviolent, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a memorandum addressing what he calls, quote, an increase in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff, and directing the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office to set up meetings with federal, state, and local law enforcement leaders for establishing tip lines for threat reporting and discussing strategies to address such threats. Garland is asking the FBI to get involved to assess this situation, but let's look at it on its face. It has a chilling effect. It's meant to dissuade and silence parents from attending these school board meetings. I want to play some of the hearing exchanges between various senators and Garland. And this is where you will witness his incompetence, plain as day. Here he is with Senator Ted Cruz.
Miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You know what? You didn't look, and nobody on your staff looked. Did you even look up the 20 instances?
As I testified, the decision to send a memo is for an assessment.
Did you look up the 20 instances?
I did not read.
Did anyone on your staff look them up?
I don't know the answer, but it's not
But of course you don't. In general, there's a reason. Look, you started your career as a law clerk to Justice Brennan. You've had many law clerks during the year, during your time as a judge. I was a clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist. I'll tell you what, if I drafted an opinion for the Chief Justice and walked in and it said, there's a disturbing pattern of violence, well, Ted, how do you know that? Well, I got an amicus brief here who claims it. You would fire a law clerk who did that. You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things.
Now here he is with Senator Josh Hawley.
That your Justice Department has identified they might be subject to and prosecuted for, like making annoying phone calls. Do you think that they're going to feel that they're welcome to speak up at a school board meeting? How about this one? They could be prosecuted for using the internet, I guess that would be Facebook, in a way that might cause emotional distress to a victim. Is that a crime of violence?
Senator, I haven't seen the memo that you're
Why
talking
haven't
about,
you?
and I don't, even from the description, it doesn't sound like it was addressed to parents. But if you
No, it wasn't addressed to parents. It was addressed to prosecutors. That's the problem. Why haven't you seen the memo?
I don't know why I haven't. I don't look at every. I do not get every memo that every U.S. attorney sends out. But if you're
wait a minute. Don't. I just want to be sure I understand this. This is a memorandum that collects 13 different federal crimes parents could be charged with. It has United States Department of Justice on the top of it, and you're telling me you haven't seen it?
Who's the memo from, Senator?
The United States Department of Justice, United States Attorney for the District of Montana.
I have not seen a memo from the District of Montana.
Not high enough priority for you?
And finally, with Senator John Kennedy.
That anybody who has any fair-minded knowledge of the world knows is going to have a chilling effect on parental involvement with respect to what their kids are learning at school.
I just want to be clear again, Senator. My memorandum did not list any of those incidents.
Come on, General, we both know this had a chilling effect. You don't think there are parents out there in the real world that said, oh my God, maybe we shouldn't go to the school board meeting, there'll be FBI agents there? We live in this isn't La La Land.
The NSBA has retracted its initial letter, apologizing for its language. But Merrick Garland has not retracted his memo. How incompetent can you be? The White House crafted this letter, and the NSBA has had to apologize for it. It seems to me that all three senators were expressing the same level of justifiable frustration at Merrick Garland that parents have with their school boards. And in both cases, you have an administrator with authority, so let's say a school board or Merrick Garland on a higher level, who are weaponizing and politicizing their respective authority to target a particular group and to shut them down. Folks, you have to be aware of this stuff. The president's staff concocted this letter so that their bad boy, the attorney general, would draft a memo based on false evidence to weaponize a body like the FBI. Where have I heard this before? Oh, maybe the Christopher Steele phony Trump-Russia dossier that caused the FBI, under James Comey and Peter Strzok, to issue a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign and arrest people. This is not the first time this has happened. So what you do is you collect phony information intentionally so that it can justify some threatening action. And in both cases, the FBI is being used to be the intimidator. I think of those poor parents in Loudoun County at their school boards, especially the lady who said that this was becoming like communist China, the very place she fled to get away from that type of class struggle. She witnessed it. And here she is in Virginia, seeing the same thing happen right before her very eyes. Here's how Senator Ben Sasse put it.
My question is, will you pledge you will report back to this committee with the results of your investigation about how big a threat the American parent class is to school boards in the country?
I will be happy to get a report back to you, but this is not about the American parent class.
I know, it's about the politicization of DOJ, and you decided to submit as a vessel, and you know better.
I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that, Senator.
The politicization of the DOJ. This is why votes matter. You thought you were voting for kind old Uncle Joe. Maybe he's a little senile, but at least he doesn't tweet mean things. Now do you see what effect that has? Every judge, every cabinet appointment, every executive order, every foreign policy decision, every intern that creates stupid TikToks, these are all decisions made by the person that you voted for. And thank God that we have governors who can run their own states like a smaller version of the way the United States was intended to be run. Look at Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida. He set up antibody stations for patients with COVID. He's opening up Florida's ports for the supply chain backup. He's standing up to school boards and critical race theory. He's stepping up to the plate to be a leader at a time of crisis because he knows the president is not getting the job done. And when you think of the problems that I've described, from the border to supply chains to unemployment, was it really a priority for your Attorney General to issue a memo weaponizing the FBI and intimidating parents who just want to have their kids educated and not indoctrinated? See, the word these days is woke, and I hate that word actually, but I do think that we need an awakening of common sense, of a return to traditions and principles. You may remember the Great Awakening of the English colonies in the early 1700s, which created a new wave of passion and fervor for religion. I think we have to have that same level of fervor to steer the country back to the right course. And this happens not just at the federal level, but your state, your county, and your local elections. Merrick Garland is even suing the state of Georgia over their new voter laws, which is absurd. I mean, that's another abuse of the office of Attorney General and a waste of taxpayer money. There's nothing racist about the Georgia law. It just makes it harder to cheat. That's a good thing. And you can see in his testimony that Garland was woefully unprepared. He looked lost, he was fumbling, unintelligent, and completely out to lunch on what was in various DOJ memos or even the incidents described in the original letter. That's just incompetence. He knew that they were going to grill him over this, so why didn't he just read the letter or know what was in it? How can a Harvard grad be this inept and unprepared? And the fact that he had no logic or no legal reason behind this memo shows exactly what Josh Hawley pointed out, that he had politicized his office. The Department of Justice is not the Department of Republican justice or Democrat justice. It's equal justice, but not when it's directed by a hyper-partisan move. Even Biden's vaccine mandates have been a hyper-partisan move, and they shouldn't be. When you see America's institutions corrupted, you have to pay attention. Whether that's the National Institutes of Health with Anthony Fauci and his relationship with Peter Daszak at EcoHealth, or whether it's the Department of Justice. It is unacceptable that these institutions that are here to protect us, whether that's our health or our rights, have been so desecrated that we allow politicians to destroy them. We can reasonably expect our congressmen and women, such as Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, to hold these people's feet to the fire. But we also can't expect them to do it all. Sure, it's their job to have these hearings, but as American voters, we have to understand what is at stake. We have to bear the responsibility of bad voting choices. Biden's poll numbers are in the toilet. He's upside down by about 7 points. That's not what the media had you believing earlier this year. But shockingly, even the media is now getting a bit more aggressive in its questioning. So if you're a parent and you just want a solid education for your kid where they're not coming home and asking you what a polyamorous person is, or why white people are the reason that America sucks, or who is sharing a bathroom, you have a reasonable right to demand answers for those things. You have a right to ask why your kid's teacher has communist paraphernalia on their classroom walls and gets extra credit for going to Antifa marches. The truth is, boards are more concerned about your kid wearing a mask than excelling in reading and writing. For every minute that they're invading in your parenting, they're not educating the next generation. Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are more concerned with how irate you are than how to make your kid a functioning member of society. And I'll add this. Merrick Garland's son-in-law, Alexander Tanner, is an official of Panorama Education, which supplies critical race theory materials to schools. Conflict of interest much? I think so. Because Tanner stands to financially gain or lose on this issue that his father-in-law is presiding over when it comes to parents being upset and demanding an end to CRT being taught in schools. Garland has to disclose that relationship. You see how this all ties in? No wonder Garland wants parents to be silenced. Not just because Biden told him to, but because he has a vested interest in it too, considering his son-in-law's business. Senators such as Tom Cotton have told Garland to resign in disgrace. And remember that Hawley is the one whose book was supposed to be published by Simon & Schuster, but they dropped it for Hawley's stance on the January 6th incident. So who's going to drop Merrick Garland when he decides to write a book? Why is it that only those on the right get canceled and those on the left get promoted? Why does Fauci still have a job? Are you telling me there's not one other medical professional in this country who can do better than him? After all of the lies and the subterfuge and the faulty advice, we based a whole national policy on his recommendations. People still do it. And he lied to our faces that the NIH did not fund EcoHealth's gain-of-function research with the Wuhan lab. And now we know that his group has been funding really unethical dog experiments. And you have a very politically partisan and unethical Attorney General. As always, folks, I try to just point out the facts to you and give you the best analysis that I can. These are never personal, nor are they partisan. They just come from a place of addressing a leader's judgment, ethics, and decisions. I call balls and strikes. I'm Beau, and that's the show.